not so much that we have a choice. It's a matter of how we're going to come home. The Soviets could have heard the same message when they were in Afghanistan, and I'm sure they had some dissidents saying, we ought to come home from Afghanistan. But no, they didn't. But they had to come home because they finally went broke. Their empire ended for economic reasons. All empires end for economic reasons. We didn't have to fight the Soviets with a nuclear warfare, with nuclear war. It ended because it was unsustainable, just as the Roman Empire ended. And this is what we're facing today. Our troops will come home. But are they going to come home in a more graceful, decent manner and you know, take our licks? Tell them what we tried to do. We made an effort, and we have done a lot of good. But it's time to come home because we're flat out broke. And I'm not talking about coming home just from the Middle East. It's time we came home from Korea and Japan and Europe. If the dollar ceases to function internationally, which is always possible, right now it's functioning much less efficiently, we should take notice. You know, the Canadian dollar is worth more than the American dollar. We should wake up and say, maybe the cause of this is we're printing too many dollars. It's not that complicated. But the reason why foreign policy is so important is, first, when you have a foreign policy of intervention, you have wars going on, it's always used as an excuse to undermine our liberties at home. But it's also an undermining of our national defense. Our national defense is in worse shape today than in a long, long time. They've just surveyed 3,400 major military personnel, and over 60% say we are much weaker as a nation than we were 5 years ago. It is now known by expert economists, Nobel Prize winning economists, who say this war, we cannot end it as the way it's continuing without spending $3 trillion. There's only been one war that we have fought longer than this war, and that's the Second World War. That Second World War is the only war that has cost more than this war. So time is running out. If we wait to the end, it's going to be chaotic. It'll be like struggling to get on helicopters again. There's a much more graceful way of ending it. And that is by saying that we did our best. We're going to turn the country over to Iraq. It belongs to them. Western powers have been involved in Iraq since World War I. The country is an artificial country drawn up by the Versailles Treaty. So it is time for us to reconsider, and we certainly ought to do it before we see our dollar collapse. If we do it now, we can save a lot of money, and that would be another point. It's the point that we have to get our budget in the balance. We're spending $1 trillion a year overseas. So let's say $2 or $3 or $4 or $500 billion a year. Balance the budget and take care of the people who are truly in need here in this country first. You know, it never made much sense to me to tax the American people as we have been doing for decades, going over and interfering in countries where we were not invited to interfere, blowing up bridges and blowing up their infrastructure, and then our government comes back to us and taxes us again and say, oh, we shouldn't have done that. Let's rebuild their country. I would say, let's not blow up their bridges in the first place. Then we wouldn't have to rebuild them, and we could take care of our bridges here at home. You know, we're spending right now in the process of spending $1 billion on an embassy in Iraq. We're building 14 military bases, and then we tell the Iraqi people, oh, we don't plan to say. It has nothing to do with oil. And they're supposed to believe us. You know, if we tell them the truth that we're done with this, we're coming home, I think there would be no more Americans killed. I think they would just say, well, let's have a de facto peace until you leave, and then we'll sort out our problems. The sooner we do that, the better. But you know what? They tell us if we leave, there'll be chaos. But if we stay, there's going to be chaos and more killing. The people during the 1960s, when I was in the Air Force, we were told, well, you can't leave Vietnam because it'll all turn communist. There will be a domino theory. And guess what? We left Vietnam. There was some chaos. But all of a sudden, after 20 years of fighting, 20 years of the French and the Americans trying to tell the Vietnamese how to run their country, guess what? They become westernized. They trade with us. We travel there. We invest there. Their president comes here. Proves the point of the founders of this country. Trade with people, be friends with people, and get along with people, even when they're imperfect. If you worry about imperfections, deal with our imperfections first. But we have a tremendous opportunity to do something about it. The fire has been lit. The message is out. It will not be put out no matter what. Somebody asked me, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do my best to keep the fires burning. But the truth is, the message is out there. Nobody is going to put this message to sleep again. There's no doubt in my mind our freedoms are dwindling. We do not have the freedoms that we once had. We do not have the respect in our courts, the executive branch, or Congress. If our executive branch abuses our civil liberties, they go to Congress and the Congress rubber stamps it. It's a test in court and the courts rubber stamp it. Our message and our philosophy is strong, alive, vibrant, and growing. But we have a long way to go to convert Washington. So this is the beginning. So one thing that has to continue, we have to do our very best in this election, get the maximum number of votes, the maximum number of delegates, but we also have to look for opportunities. And nobody centrally, one individual can't say, well, you do this, you do this, you do this. Everybody has to take upon themselves to find a job. And this is what's so wonderful about these meetup groups. 1,500 meetup groups who are loosely knit together in an organization to promote liberty. Now, if I would have set out 1 year ago and say, oh yeah, I heard about these meetup groups, I'm going to raise some money and I'm going to hire somebody to organize meetup groups, it wouldn't have worked. You know, there's no way. That's not the way it happens. Other campaigns have come to us. Other candidates, other members of Congress come up. Tell us how you do it. Tell us how you organize the internet. I said, well, why don't you try getting a message worth selling? But we do have, I'm delighted that things have moved along further and faster than I thought, because our liberties are dwindling faster than I wished. And now today, you know, our privacy is essentially gone. We can be spied on continuously by our government. Now the big argument in Washington today is our government has come along and told the telecommunications companies to turn over all your records to the government. So the telecommunications companies say, oh, we're worried we might get sued. And they should be worried. But what does our government do? They come in and they say, well, let's exempt them. Let the telecommunications company do the dirty work for the government. And here our head candidate, our lead candidate now in our side, Senator McCain, supports that position. It's bad enough our government spying on us, but to compel and then exempt private companies from doing it, we are drifting rather quickly away from the protection of our liberties. At the same time, we have eliminated essentially the right of habeas corpus. It's been through the courts now. We do not have adequate protection. We have secret courts. We have secret prisons. We have, as a principle, endorsed torture. They're up there arguing. Do you think waterboarding is torture or not? I say to those who vote for waterboarding should experience it before they can vote for it.